Welcome back, everybody. Today we're talking again with our confidant inside Burma, Romeo, who we spoke with about 6 weeks ago and published a conversation on February 2nd. And the theme of this conversation was to try to give a sense of what life has been like in Burma under the past couple years of a military coup that's taken place and the crackdown by the military, and to give a sense of like what life has been like there and what resistance forces are doing and how dangerous it is, but and maybe how people can support these efforts to resist this violent military coup that's been happening. Um, so I'd like to start out, Romeo, if you could, like our podcast was published on February 2nd of 2023. That's the 2-year anniversary of when this military coup took place. Can you describe, was there anything that was done in the country on that day to commemorate the second anniversary, and what has transpired since then? How have things changed? Have things gotten worse? Have things gotten better? From your perspective, can you just give us kind of a picture of what the past 4 to 6 weeks have been like in Yangon?
Yes. First of all, the anniversary was on February 1st. So they celebrated the anniversary on February 1st. We marked it as we didn't do much in Yangon. Basically we all had like participated in silent strike. So it is like we all stay quiet. Nobody goes out. Businesses were closed down, and so that is a silent strike. That is what is meant by silent strike. So what is amazing is that Yangon is basically, you can say, back in their business. Like people are already operating their businesses. People are going back to their work, and like as a commercial city, it has been very busy. You know, uh, However, and also because like Yangon was heavily locked down, and also basically tight control under the military. So people have a hard time participating in the revolution. You know, uh, what is amazing with the silent strike is that we can see the people will in resisting the military government. So the silent strike happened between 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So within those time, there were hardly any businesses at all. Like the whole city was very quiet. Like just two or three people walking on the sidewalk. You know, like so businesses were shut down. There are no taxi, no cars going on the road. So, and everybody stays silent, quiet. So,
So
but even though, so it, I think like it is a very strong uh, demonstration, in a way that we can in Yangon. That people are stay in, in fighting spirit, even though they couldn't really, do much physically.
that sounds incredible. I have a couple follow-up questions. One is, so how was this silent strike organized? Like, how do people get the word that, hey, we're all going to do this between these hours on this day? And what was the response to that? Was there any kind of reaction from the government? Did it catch them by surprise, or did it kind of come and go without incident?
Well, it was spread through social media, so mainly Facebook. So like Facebook and mouth to mouth. So like we have silent strike, and sometimes like people like spreading like silent strike like poster, across internet. So that's how it has spread it. Um, so there is no people will participate or not, but they actually did. So there was no one forcing you, or just someone or doing anything. So it's just that the strike committee released that we are going to do silent strike, and the work spread around using the social media and also mouth to mouth, and it just happened. Of course, I'm not sure how military was like anticipating on this anniversary, uh, but some business were forced to open. But even if some business were forced to open by the order of the military, no one really go and shop, or the business is like blooming. So even if it's open, it's just no business is happening.
So what was there a reaction to this? Do you think that there will be more of these kind of silent strikes? And do you think that the main thing was this was kind of a symbolic act of resistance and solidarity among the people? Or do you think that in, maybe in addition to that, did it have a could the regime be weakened this way? And do you anticipate more of this kind of tactic, which seems like a very nonviolent tactic?
No, it is more like a symbolic significance that people are stay on the resistant, on the resistance side, and also more like a moral encouragement that we are still resistant in some way. Of course, it has no effect on the military government. They didn't want to lose their power in any way. So aside from that, the state fighting happening in Korean state, Kachin state, and the state villages, a lot of villages were burned down in the middle part of Myanmar, especially in Sagai. What is saddening is that a lot of PDF, like resistance forces, were killed in the Sagai area as well.
So the PDF that you just referred to is the People's Defense Force.
Yeah, People Defense Forces. So
Okay.
mostly those are like civilian forces who were
Right.
not military trained, before the coup. Yeah.
Right. So just kind of ordinary people, and they span like a lot of different ethnic groups, right? So it's kind of just an organic movement of ordinary people that have formed a resistance, and it's been called the People's Defense Force. And so there's been a crackdown to try to identify people affiliated with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So since like the military tactic is that they are like, even if some of the youth are not affiliated to the PDF, their tactic seems to like better to be safe than sorry kind of thing. So even if you are just a normal civilian, not a part of PDF, if they suspect them, they will just eliminate them, kind of tactic. And also a lot of the villages in the middle part of Myanmar were burned down. Like a lot of them were destroyed just because military suspect that they support PDF, or some of the villagers from there become PDF. Even if the whole village didn't involve in any way, they just got burned down anyway.
So so over the past month or so since this silent strike, have things escalated? Have things calmed down? Have there been changes that you've observed? And I don't know how much you can talk about the type of activities that you've been involved with over the recent weeks. Can you give us some of the picture about that?
Oh, I've just been involved in, basically getting some funding for people. Like some of the people, like I got some funding from, my friends. Some of my friends are regular donor, I could say, and and also we also have a group for we make it on a Facebook that we monthly collect monthly donation. Yeah, the problem is that some of the groups that I work with, even okay, right now it's really hard for like city based Yangon based PDF to do any action, right? But the thing is that uh even if they didn't get they were not able to do anything, they still have to eat and survive. The thing is that some of them they couldn't go out and walk. They are in hiding. So they still need support in that sense. So some of them are really struggling in that sense. So I'm kind of helping them. Yeah. So in the past, I also focus on people in other areas. So the thing is that with the revolution, there are a lot of side effects as well, negative consequences, especially with the funding, collection, and stuff like that. So, uh, the trust issue spoke quite a volume. There are some, fundraisers who kind of like, what do you say the word? Kind of abuse their, kind of, what is it? What is the word? Cheated? No, not cheated.
You mean
They didn't.
some people
Yeah,
fundraising they're taking
yeah,
some of the money?
yeah. They took it for their personal use.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so there are some trust issues. So what I'm doing right now is that with the group funding collection, they now have a system where they give a certificate or like some sort of acknowledgement that they receive this amount of funding, from this group on this day. So it is okay for some of the resistant groups to give back those kind of acknowledgement and certificate, but for some groups it is not okay. So I have a I so with a group that we founded, but it is almost 3 years actually. It has been almost 3 years with the group because there are a lot of people in the group. So I only donated to groups that can give back the certificate because of the trust issue, because there are a lot of people. But donation come from my close friends and can give to like individual PDFs or some groups that cannot give sort of uh, any sort of acknowledgement or certificate. Because some of the PDFs I don't have any connection with, either Facebook or Signal or Viber, any sort of messaging contact. I only have a phone contact, so it is hard for me to get uh it is hard for me to get some sort of acknowledgement back. Sometimes some people ask for help, not through direct connection, through other people, from either from my mom or my friends, or from people that I got to know through revolution. So it's not, because it's not a direct contact, sometimes it's also hard to get some sort of acknowledgement. uh, uh, I think that revolution right now is very stagnant, because of all those fraud cases. The word fraud, the fraud cases, and another thing is that the political taking a political advantage. Some people. I'm not blaming. I'm not blaming anyone, but there are people hmm, who are taking a fortune out of the misfortune of a lot of people. With these kind of cases are really discouraging toward the revolution. And as so it has been 2 years the revolution is happening, and because we have a COVID-19 and also economic crisis, um, people are getting really tired. Yeah, like mentally strained, sometimes including myself. So
Yeah,
if we are dragging this revolution a long time, we might not get anywhere.
right. No, I understand it. The psychological challenge is often as big
Yeah.
as the physical challenge of all of it. Like to bring Lisa and maybe Rocky as well into the conversation. Maybe you guys can introduce yourselves a little bit and talk about some of your experience in the region, and ask some questions from our interviewee here.
Go and introduce yourself, Rocky.
Me. Hello. My name is
Hello.
Rob.
Hello, Rocky.
Hello, yeah.
It's nice seeing you.
Who are you?
Yeah. Nice to hear your voice. Yeah. Yeah, I'm Korean from Korean state. Grew up in a refugee camp and now living with my wife in Scotland.
He's still eating betel nut. Do you see that he had to extract betel nut from his mouth to introduce himself there?
Mhm.
Does are you guys growing betel nut there in Scotland?
No, but there's a Bangladeshi guy along the road who sells it to Rocky.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You can get a lot of stuff.
So you grew up in the refugee camp.
Yeah.
Oh, and now you're in Scotland with me. So I met Rocky in Thailand. I worked for more than 20 years on the Thai-Burma border with starting off working with an education group in the refugee camps for 3 years. It was trying to help young people find some further studies opportunities after secondary school, even though that was very close to being impossible. And then I worked for a long time with different women's organizations that were operating in exile from Burma. And then also with the Metao Clinic, which is a large health and community center run and managed by people living in exile in Thailand. So I feel like I've been in Scotland for 4 years. I mean, for a good 20 years, I would say I knew a lot about what was happening in Burma. The last 4 years, I've had a step back, and Myat is definitely the one with the most current information. But Rocky keeps up to date with it all as well. But yeah, that's me.
Yeah, so maybe Rocky, you guys, like I think a lot of our listeners, just like a lot of us in the West, we don't get a lot of information out of Burma. It's not one of the things that is in our news a lot of the time, and so maybe a lot of listeners are not super familiar with it. Obviously, you're Korean and you have deep connections in Korean state and what's been going on there. So, I mean, can you maybe give a little bit, just a brief description of your experience of what life has been like there and sort of the nature of the conflict and the major players? And if you know any sort of recent news or anything that you want to highlight from recent weeks, because obviously, I mean, there has been a lot of fighting going on recently, but that fighting goes back decades and decades and decades. So maybe you can, from your perspective, give the audience a kind of a picture of what that's been like.
So like in Burma, always had to understand the situation there. That's always we struggle for democracy, and also the other one struggle for equality. So ethnic people like Korean, they want self-determination, like equality. They want to rule their own state. So now but slowly, because of the country as a whole had to be something together to be Burma, like so the point that they go is they go for federal instead of independent. So that's basically for the ethnic, what they want is they want some to be equal with the especially Burma majority. And then so that's been happening, I mean, since the beginning of like
Independent.
Burma, yeah, not even before that, yeah, because the history about fighting between the Korean or the before, it was a long time ago. So there was two like not only like for example because I'm a Korean, so I would talk more about like so we stay in that area. We have their own village separate, like Ruba, our village, but because of the colonial, the British, so they try to unite everybody in one under one country, colonization, and then when independence comes, so to get independent, British try to get other ethnic groups also have to be together. So that's why one of the big leader like Aung San at that time try to get the ethnic and then promise like okay we go for kind of federalism. So you have your right. So that's why a lot of like ethnic people join. Okay, we go for it. We don't want to be just only like the lower Burma got independent. We all get it together. Then after that we start thinking about how to if we can work together, then we can how to say split from that. That's where in the Burma the constitution that they try to write it down first. That's why agreeing the ethnic people to join together to do. So, but yeah, of course, military control and the feeling of like you don't have equal rights. So a lot of other reason, there was people start to go against the government. And then soon enough, then the government, the military, like the Navy, tried to get a coup. So to press everybody to come with, other stuff like communities or thing like that. So what up?
It's a very potted history.
So that's the, kind of history. Yeah. So I grew up, I mean, I was Korean and I was in Korean state. Try to get to get education, but because my family background is like my father is a Korean soldier, so I was not very have a lot of chance to go through that channel. So I became like in the jungle area and I became refugee.
How old were you when you became a refugee?
I left Thailand when I was 4 or 5. They told us only 2 weeks to stay in Thailand. And then I became more than 20 years. So until, So what happened? Oh, the thing, I still got some contact with a friend, like Korean people, because I used to work with Korean youth organization in a center level. So before they do national ceasefire and see it. So we do a lot of like jungle, what's really happening right now. You just go in a place, you have to be always aware of what's the army, the military army going to attack you, especially because we are kind of outsider, like supporting their enemy. So they don't really like that. So every time you go, you need to be really careful where to go. And then some area they will say, no, you're not allowed. The group that you go with, they will say, okay, you're not allowed to go. It's too dangerous. So life being there quite long until they start in 2012. Ceasefire. Start and a little bit the situation getting, I mean, not like to be able to travel a little bit better. And after the coup, then everything go back. Actually worse than before, because before they don't have a lot of road come through your area. Because when it's a ceasefire, everybody build a road for development. So everywhere you can go by, like you have nowhere to hide in summer. So it's a big, And then from there they get the geography, because before I think the ethnic, because they had their own area, they know very well their area. So they kind of protecting quite good, like for safety or like to survive. But now because of road everywhere, so it's kind of open. It's not safe. Like,
So let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. So in 2012, so there has been this massive history of conflict over the years, but in 2012 there was a ceasefire, and things got a little bit better. So things got a little bit better for some years there after the ceasefire. But because things got better and were more peaceful, people said, okay, we're going to build roads, we're going to do a little bit of development.
The government, to be fair, the government
did that.
So what happened was, there was a military dictatorship. The military around 2012 said, we're not going to be a military dictatorship anymore. They took off their military uniform, put on plain clothes and said, see, we're not military anymore. We're going to hold an election. But what that did then, and they let Aung San Suu Kyi out of house arrest.
Right.
So what that did was it signaled to a lot of foreign countries that it was time for development. They called it peace, but it was time for development, which meant money for building roads and things like this.
Okay.
So there was this huge peace process between 2012 right up until the coup. Actually, a lot, and with millions of pounds going into the country for this peace process. That a lot of people called a sham peace process. But also a lot of people going, well, hey, we can get into Burma. It's got lots of natural resources and we can make those ours. Now, in Karen State, what happened during the peace process is there was a huge increase in the number of military, not only roads, but also Burmese military bases.
Uh-huh.
There was a massive increase. So in fact, during the peace process, they already had gained more control. So when the coup happened in February, the Karen were in a worse position than they were pre-ceasefire.
Uh-huh. So
because they had more mobility and more bases across the country. And I don't think that's just true for Karen State. I think it was true across the country.
Right. Right. So the so-called peace process in a lot of ways was a method to pry open a lot of these areas.
Pry open the money.
Roads, and like you were saying, Rocky, like they know the geography better now. They have maps, they have roads. And whereas previously when there was less road and development, then it was easier for people to, if they had to hide in the jungle, you know, they could disappear into the jungle more effectively than now where there's more infiltration of the military in the region.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to ask you guys about. So whenever there is a flare up in this conflict over the years, that often has the effect, obviously, displacing a lot of people, and a lot of people like yourself, Rocky, came over to Thailand, and there's refugee camps and stuff there. So in this latest round of fighting, has there been a lot of people fleeing to Thailand? What's the situation in Thailand in the refugee camps there? You know, are people being processed through those? Are they being turned away? Like what's going on in terms of the people flooding across the border?
Because like Thailand have to they share quite a long border with Burma, and then they're being hosting the refugee. So one of the way I think in 2007 or 8, they start doing the process of big resettlement. So like US will get a lot, Australia, other country will take whatever refugee, because they thought doing that they will like how to say.
So close down the
close
refugee. They
down
keep
the-
trying to find strategies to close down the refugee camp.
But it's turned, instead of that, like in Mela, it was like before 30,000, 40,000, until now, even a lot of people go to abroad, stay about 40, 50,000 people. I mean, the registered people will be less than that, but the one not registered through UNHCR, the number are the same. So even increase right now because of what happened is because the thing happened in Burma, like coup, and there are a lot of other civilian like PDL or things like that hold it up. So more people, we try to find a way to get into the safer area. But we still have a lot of people who are very brave to just, stay in city and then try to organize like Mia and other people. So that's very good. And I'm no, it's quite very dangerous, but they are very brave to do that. But a lot of people who doesn't like, especially who have connection like with the Quran or anything like your relative, if you are low, you will be really exposed in those areas, especially when you are in the city. So they just will come and just grab you right away. So those people also like we try to get to they call it liberated area. But before the ceasefire, because a lot of jungle, I would say, because then you can hide a lot. Because it's quite open, and then especially when the KNUS has kind of peace agreement with the government. So to support the opposition group, like they cannot do it like freely, like it used to be like 88. 88, they can hold a lot of students coming out and try to organize them, because at that time they are fighting against the government. Because now with the ceasefire thing and then the politics in the KNU leadership, some are weird. So you can't really do that. But they stay like in some area they stay, let's say Harvard, that protest,
Harbor.
Harbor, NLD, Melbourne. So that's why the township that they try to develop was attacked by the military government,
Yeah.
airplane. The worst thing now, they use more airplane instead of because I don't know why they this time, but usually before maybe they know the situation better. That's why they use more aeroplane, or I don't know. So that's the other thing that happening right now in current state. They go with aeroplane, like not only current state, other state. They just do it. How to say it, the aeroplane? Maybe they don't have enough military power. I don't know, but yeah, that's the other thing that because when you bomb, even you target like the military camp or the headquarters or something, you still can hit other people. So they don't really care.
Right. So they've been using they have better maps of the territory now, and they're able to use fighter jets and stuff to drop bombs and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So something you were touching on there, and I think in some of the time that we have remaining today, I think it would be good to talk about the different ways that resist. I mean, it's very limited effectiveness and a lot of resistance, but with the various problems in the country over the years, there's a sort of like official NGOs and foreign governments that have like tried to do things. And then there's a lot of grassroots and community-based efforts to provide support to people in relief after natural disasters or after conflict or something like that. And I know that you all have a lot of experience with those grassroots channels for as often the only way that any aid can reach people a lot of times is through these unofficial channels. So I know you have like a lot of good stories and anecdotes. So if you want to just, relate some of that and how, methods that have been effective for assisting people versus other methods, maybe official methods that have been kind of stonewalled and prevented from providing aid.
So I can speak a wee bit about this. I'm sure Myat has got stories as well. But just to say, when Rocky was talking about you asked about if people could get to Thailand or not from Burma when there was the fighting. And I know when the beginning of the heaviest fighting after the coup, right? I mean, current state has seen decades of fighting and attacks and people having to flee. But when there was some very heavy fighting and a lot of people were very close to the border wanting to cross, and they were not allowed to cross by the Thai authorities. The Thai authorities was actively preventing people from crossing. And so I have worked a lot with the Karen Women's Organization, who do a lot of kind of organizing to help people in emergencies. And I always remember at the time I was doing some work with them, so I was speaking to them every week, them talking about, they are like, people are amazing, like the community resilience and the community networks and how they get them to work to just like try through whatever they can to get that help to people, with their main strength being those community networks. They'll find a way, right? And so they were saying that they were, even though people couldn't cross, they wanted to send rice because there was no rice left on the Karen side. They were wanting to send rice from Thailand to the river and then send it across the river to the people that needed it. But they were even being prevented to do that. So they were trying everything. Like at one point, they just had a guy on a motorbike who would like put on as many sacks of rice as he could on his motorbike. And he knew the jungle tracks. That area, Josh, like through the jungle to get to the Salween River to find a guy with a boat. And those would be Thai Karen villagers. It wasn't Burmese Karen villagers, but there's enough of a sense of family between those two groups. There was people, and it was risky. And I think, even to be fair, I do think that even that got shut down. Like the Thais got wise to it, and so even Thai villagers helping to get rice to the river to send across was being made difficult at that point. But it just made, when they said that, I could just imagine it, this guy on a motorbike, like, we've got to find a way to get food to these people and we're going to do it, and this is how we're going to do it, just always trying to find the right way. But I was involved quite a lot in 2008 there was Cyclone Nargis, which happened in the Delta area of Burma, which was far from where I was working. I was working in Mesot on the Thai-Burma border in the east of the country, southeast of Burma. The Cyclone Nargis hit the southwest of Burma, and it was one that hit the news. It was really awful. Lots of people were killed, lots of homes were washed away, and it was made all the nastier by the fact that the military was blocking aid from foreign countries to help the people that needed it, and in the midst of it trying to hold a fake referendum what was the referendum even about?
Constitution.
Oh, the constitution. They drafted a constitution to give themselves, to make sure that they stayed in power. So they'd set up this constitution that said, okay, we're going to have free and fair democratic elections, but as long as there's always at least 10% of the military within every level of government, right down to village level, up to parliament.
That's 25.
Oh, is it 25? Sorry, see all my
25,
facts.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm forgetting all my facts from the past. Anyway, so they were their priority was holding this referendum in the midst of a massive humanitarian crisis. And I mean, even people who were in the army were stressed out because they were being told to man the referendum organizing when they wanted to go and find out if their families were okay. And so the groups that I were with, we were sat and messing up, going, what can we do? And at first we were just like, well, all we can do is like, we'll do advocacy work. We'll say that, you know, that humanitarian aid needs to happen. But then very, very quickly, people were like, well, I've got an auntie who lives down there, or I've got a cousin over there, and did it. And before you knew it, we had a whole chain of, my colleague used to call it underwater networks. I mean, it was underwater and overland networks that were getting money from the border all the way into villages that weren't getting any help, and then bringing back, we did get back documentation of what had been bought and also human rights stories. So we were getting both. We were collecting documentation of what was happening using those networks, as well as getting help to people that needed it. And it was, yeah, it was pretty grim times, but always inspirational to see just how much people can do on very little.
Right. And, you know, something that's always struck me about when you've related that story, how things were so extreme at the time that, if I remember right, there were planes of aid that were landing at the airport in Yangon from France or from the UN or from whatever. And literally they were just holding the plane on the tarmac or telling them to take off or taking the materials and sending them away. And so there were all of these official, you know, other countries or international groups or NGOs that it seemed like pretty much had their hands tied for being able to reach the affected areas or to do anything, because it was pretty much under total lockdown. And the trickle of aid that came in was through these informal grassroots channels that kind of went around all that and basically, I mean, broke the law, but, you know, they were
broke the law, which then means that, I mean, it's the same issue just now in Burma. Those foreign governments are all like, you know, groups like the groups that Romeo's working with, or the groups that I work with, are all saying, don't put anything through the military government, because if, you know, even if you're trying to help people, but it's going through the military government, the military is getting a cut and you're legitimizing the military. But they'll all go, well, we can't go any other way because we can't break the law. You know, they can't, very few official institutions are capable of the flexibility that community groups are capable of. And that's a real problem. It's a real problem if you're trying to bring about systematic change in a country. I think, Romeo, do you go ahead?
Yeah, the same thing is happening, right? Like right now, a lot of people are requesting NGOs and UN organizations to not work with the military government so that you don't legitimize them. But they still have to sign MOU and stay working with the government because they said there's no other way around. Whereas in the community level, people are trying to work, you know, without you know, without the approval of the military government, you know, resisting them. Yeah. So the same thing with Nugget that happened with the COVID-19 as well.
Yeah.
Right after the coup, we have a very bad COVID wave, like data wave. A lot of people dying in Myanmar, and even then even then the people are like self-helping themselves. You know, they're trying to get oxygen supply, they're trying to get their own medication and stuff like that. Even then, the military is trying to restrict the oxygen supply from the factories and trying to close down the medical supplies and closing the shops and stuff like that. So the supply prices the prices of the oxygen went up, and all those happening like black market have happened. So people who cannot afford, you know, like people die, you know, transportation have died.
Yeah.
Mm.
I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned the black market, and also I think in our previous conversation you talked quite a bit about the inflation that's been really bad, and the economic crisis that's gone along with this political and military crisis, and so on. I was reading a few articles online from I think most of them were published around late 2021 or early 2022, but they were discussing possible roles of cryptocurrency used by groups as an alternative exchange system, or to, get around some of the inflation or something like that. I saw some news articles that were saying that maybe the NUG, the sort of government in exile, was maybe using Tether or some other type of crypto coin or something for exchange. I'm wondering if you have any experience with that or perspectives on that. Do you see any roles that cryptocurrency could play in facilitating exchange or facilitating support getting to people in the country that doesn't go through the banks and doesn't go through the government and that sort of thing? Is there anything that you can comment on about the roles of cryptocurrency in this crisis?
No, not really. I have never used it. Nobody I know use it as well. So I'm not very familiar with that, the topic of cryptocurrency. But I saw like Bitcoins and all those, other types of currency using it. People talking about it. But the role, I think, has been very limited in terms of probably like just familiarity and accessibility and technology wise. Yeah.
I was talking with a friend. I have a friend who is definitely more knowledgeable about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and stuff than I am. We were talking about this topic, and he was mentioning how like there's various apps that you can download and have on your phone that's like a crypto wallet, where if you and I both had this, then we could exchange crypto tokens that way. Me in the US, I could potentially go to a bank and redeem some of that for cash. I know that would be difficult or impossible for you, but one question I brought up about that, or just in the conversation with him, is as I understood. So from our past conversation back during, like, I think November and December and January, there was a time where you felt like things were not as safe for you because you had friends and coworkers that had been detained and interrogated and so on, and you had to kind of disappear for a while and leave the city and go to an undisclosed location for safety. And I remember you describing that you had to be careful about, if you took any tech devices, a laptop or a phone or anything with you, you had to be very careful about what was on those, because you could be stopped at a checkpoint and you could have those kind of things searched, and and then that could potentially be endangering. So do you think that this type of crypto exchange that goes through people's phones, do you think it would be inhibited by this, like because people's phones are being searched? Do you think that would be a barrier for that kind of thing, or can you imagine it being a way that you could more secretly exchange funds?
Right now, like cryptocurrency is really really unpopular yet. Not popular yet. So I'm not sure how many percentage of the resistance forces are using, but not that I know of. So if it is a new thing, the military government will notice and you can safely use it. But after a while, they will start tracking it. They will start trying to control the money flow. So it's a vice versa thing. We are also trying to like movements to prohibit the funding flow to the military government. So the military government is also trying to do all sort of restriction so that the money won't reach to the resistant forces or CDMRs or any sort of like forces. Yeah.
And when you're talking
initially
about
it will be okay if people started using it, but after a while, if they know it, they were trying to block it.
Right. I understand. They would find some way to co-opt it. So for the exchange that is happening now, is it mostly just in cash then, just hand to hand?
Yeah, so if it is like a close group that I can like they can know me, then I definitely do cash to cash. But otherwise I have to use, sometimes I have to use my own account, my sister's account, my friend's account. Or sometimes sometimes like the funding come from the Thai side, like Thai Myanmar through Thai Myanmar border. Then I can like directly sometimes I can directly transfer it to the receiver, not to me, to the receiver, so that I don't really need to, so they can track me basically. So we have to be very careful. Right now they are trying to put more restriction on it, like like but previously we have like two very popular transfer method like PP and Wave Money is basically mobile wallet kind of thing. No. Right. So KP and Wave Money. So previously we can just put any name or any sort of identity card to the receiver. But right now they are like the government like put out a regulation that the agency have to check all those information so that they can track those PDF and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, I guess for my last question, and maybe Lisa and Rocky, if you guys have some last questions or comments or anything before we start to wrap, I'm just wondering if you can give an idea what you anticipate over the next few weeks. Do you see any changes on the horizon? Do you see any new efforts arising that you feel optimistic about? Do you have any just messages or lessons that you want to impart to the outside world, maybe to get more attention on this issue, or, I don't know that any of the official agencies outside are going to be much use, but whatever you might have to say to them. And just going forward, how can people support, and what should we be paying attention to in this struggle?
I can say something. I mean, I guess I'm just going to say that, I mean, it's very, very hard to have optimism that there is change coming soon.
Yeah.
But what has always been, because even when things were a bit better, like let's say during the time of the peace process, when things were a bit better for some people and there was greater freedoms, it wasn't great for everybody. There were still attacks happening in Kachin State and in Shan State and in Karen State. And there was so much that was wrong with the peace process that people were also having to kind of fight against, to say this isn't going to work or whatever. So, and then, you go before that, before ceasefire, when there was just like, there was over 500,000 people displaced within the country, and you go back and then you've got the British and you had the Japanese, and there's just a long history of violence and oppression throughout the country. They can be very depressing when you look at it that way. But there's also a long history of community resistance and resilience, and that has always been where the hope is. And I think, my perspective has always been that if you're serious about wanting to support change in Burma, you have to look to the movement, not what the government's saying or even what the opposition parties are saying who are trying to get elected. But you need to look at on the ground, what are the movements? Like, what's the women's movement asking for? What's the youth movement asking for? What are the people who are environmental activists acting for? And you have to find a way to support them. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you.
Josh was off.
Josh, you're muted.
Sorry, I was just asking Romeo if you have any thing to add to what Lisa was saying, or if you have some concluding thoughts for us. What's coming up for you in the next few weeks? What are you focused on?
Oh, I'm not particularly focusing on anything. It's just regular things that I'm working on, like things that I can walk through Yangon, helping in any way that I can. So sometimes I normally do only fundraising. Even then it is just limited. But sometimes people come ask me help, then I help them in any way that possible. Yeah.
That's quite a lot, actually.
Absolutely. Well, so thanks for this update, and thank you, Lisa and Rocky, for joining and sharing from your experience. And I think we can check back in from time to time and see how things are going. And I'm going to be working on my end to try to open up some more channels of support, and we'll figure out the complicated mechanics of providing support from this end. Yeah, and I think Lisa put it best, that it's really the community bonds and the networks and the grassroots channels as where hope lies, because those things persist even though all these other changes are happening and there's violence and disruption and politics and all this kind of stuff. Those bonds of community seem to be very strong, and that seems to be where the hope lies in the situation. So that's what we'll focus on to try to support as much as we can. Anyway, thank you all very much for taking the time today. I know everybody's schedules are really busy, but it's been great to talk to you, and we'll check in again soon.
Yeah, nice to see y'all.
See you all.